Mark Cleverly, welcome to the Preconstruction Podcast.
Glad to be here.
Good, thank you. This is take two. My technical department failed us the first time.
Yeah, it's fine. I remembered all the stuff I said last time, so we should be good to go.
Good, man. And I see that you've got the prized asset hanging in your office this time.
Yeah, it's made it off of the desk. Obviously, you've got a new background, so I wanted to make sure that mine kind of kept up with the
Yeah. New year, new background. I love it. We'll come back to that piece of cloth. I can't even say the team. That piece of cloth sitting in your desk. So anybody who doesn't know Mark Cleverly, construction executive with McCarthy in Atlanta, Georgia, focusing on healthcare and education, higher education, been there since 2013. But I want to kind of start, and previous to 2013, talk about, and anybody who hasn't picked it up, I'm from Ireland and Mark's from the UK. Starting out in the UK, coming through secondary school or high school as it's known in the US. What are you thinking? Talk to me about construction, why construction, and who influenced your decision to go into construction?
It's a strange story, and I'll keep it brief. But my dream was always actually to be in the Air Force. And coming out of school, I actually went to the Air Force and tried to get into the RAF. And unfortunately, I'm red, green, colourblind. So they politely told me that I couldn't fly in any capacity based upon that. And it was kind of a weird situation. I was at college doing my A-levels. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. It was kind of a very difficult decision for me. And actually, it was a careers advisor at college that kind of taught me through a lot of different options and led me into construction that way. I actually ended up interviewing with Kia London, Kia Group, big GC back home, and went for an interview probably a week after that, and they offered me a kind of an entry-level position full-time and sponsored me through college, through various forms of college, through GMBQ to get me into the degree course and then a degree in quantity surveying.
Good, man. So and then talk to me about quantity surveying degree, because if anybody knows me on LinkedIn, I'm a stickler for the education system in the US. It just does not service pre-construction and estimating. There's nothing specific. Even when I speak to students, professors, there's just they just skim over estimating. They may put a quick module on it and pre-construction, and then it's all construction management and operations side. It's just a big pain of mine. But the quantity surveying degree in Europe, South Africa, Australia, UK and Ireland, obviously, is very much focused on cost management. Just give us a quick overview of what they teach and how they structure it.
So it was a while back when I did my degree back in, I graduated early 2000. So it may have changed a little, but generally there's a lot of emphasis on cost management as a whole, but we specifically have standard method of measurement back home in the UK. So everyone takes off in the same way. So you learn how to do takeoff, quantity takeoff based on that standard method of measurement, so that when you have any documents that come in, whether it's on the client side or the contractor side, everyone knows exactly. It's kind of CSI division, but you take off a specific way. So you'll talk that, you spend a lot of time on estimating, the estimating process. There's a lot of contractors, a lot of contracts. But generally as a whole, you get like a wider kind of grasp. There's sections on land surveying. I remember going out and setting out curves and curve in the road in the middle of the parking lot of our college, actually Chelmsford in Essex, where I graduated from. But it's a lot more kind of cost and contract focused. And you spend a lot of your time on the management of contracts and the management of numbers and change orders and, making sure that from an estimating standpoint, how to budget work. It's a lot more focused on that cost management side, and that really helps, from an estimating standpoint, a pre-construction standpoint, knowing where your end point is going to be and knowing the process of how to get there from college, like when you actually experience it at work, it's, very similar. It's never exactly the same.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So am I right in saying, then the UK, as you say, you compared it to the CSIs. So those standards, if you were building a hospital from the ground up in Essex and a warehouse in London, that the same standards would be for both? Okay.
Yep, exactly the same. So I still have a copy of SMM7, Standard Method of Measurement 7. It may be an 8 by now, I don't know, but it just sets out each section, what it is. I believe D is groundwork, so like civil work, and it's excavation, how to do grading, how you take off excavation of foundations, and all of this stuff, and it is set out kind of like a CSI division, but you just go through. So when you look at a takeoff, it's just B, C, D, E. You know where to look, you know where to find it, and you just kind of work your way through. I may be completely wrong about B and D. That's a long time since
we'll not do any research into that. So now that you've got a good 7 years in the US, which do you think is, and I'm not going to say easiest, but which do you think is best to do it to build the way that they do in Europe and the UK or the US?
As far as an estimating takeoff standpoint or in general, I mean, that's a hard question to answer.
So many variables.
What I feel actually is, although the level of education, for to get a degree in, England versus getting the same construction management degree here is concerned, is very similar. It's very kind of difficult to get through, and people that come out the other side are normally very well trained, and I feel like the level of respect that you get in the US is way higher as a kind of a construction professional generally, just like out in general population, for want of a better term, is at home I still feel like you're treated as a builder, even though degree qualified and working on multi-million-dollar projects, and people say, what do you do for a living? You say construction, and that's kind of the end of the conversation. Like, they're not really interested in what you do. And here you say, in construction, they say, oh, what kind of construction would you do? And there's a lot more kind of interesting in the profession as a whole. And I work with some incredibly smart people here at McCarthy. I mean, I've worked with incredibly smart people, all through my career, but here especially, like, the standard is extremely high. The people that I work with are incredible. I learn a lot from them every day. I mean, I know you've spoken to Colleen Martindale, and I've worked directly with Colleen on a number of occasions, and I mean, she's freaking awesome. I mean, I can't, it just feels a little different here. I can't really explain it, put my finger on it, but it just seems to be a high level of respect that in turn makes people come across in a much more professional way. It's really hard to explain.
Very good, interesting. I never heard that before. I think anybody that I spoke to that's been in Europe or worked in Europe and worked in the US, they always talk about the differences, the difference in measurements, the difference in ways of training, the estimator, vast quantity surveyor. But that's an interesting observation. So again, you've qualified now. I think 2002. You go and work for a few GCs in and around London. You open your own firm for 5 or 6 years. How was that? That sounds like a big leap for a young man.
So I was 30 when I decided to go on my own. Predominantly it was because I'd been working for a developer out in Jersey. I love Jersey, but it wasn't a point in my life where place that I wanted to be long term, unfortunately. So coming back home, I decided it was a good time to make the leap. I was single, no family to worry about, just kind of me. And I don't remember in 2008, but it was the start of a global recession. So maybe not the most ideal time to go out on my own, but really worked freelance for mainly for some GCs that I've worked with previously, but obviously with the economy, it made me a little bit more flexible. So I've got a lot of work with those guys, and then that kind of expanded into working with subcontractors on helping with claims and final accounts, and actually working with some clients and working on some budgets for. It's kind of fell into kind of a group of people that had money that wasn't really being touched by the recession, so they were still spending. So I was helping them budget on housing, just all kinds of. Literally, if someone would pay me to do something during that period of time, there was a good chance I was going to say yes. So it was a little stressful for a couple of years. Kind of the first couple of years of that was tough, and but very rewarding. I kind of learned a lot more about client relationships and how to manage and deliver on promises during that period of time. Especially, I suppose I had a good grasp of it generally, but when it's you and it's your word and you're promising to deliver something, then, you know, if you don't, you're never going to work for that person again. So it was certainly a growth experience, and had some direct labor working for me. I ended up doing some exterior paving work and electrical work. I mean, really,
did what you had.
Any way to make money. It was testing time.
It's amazing, and I've spoken to someone recently about this. Those are the times that you learn the most, because if during the boom years where you're just doing the same thing and projects are just sailing through, you only really learn during the down times and during difficult projects, and even when projects do go wrong and finish wrong and finish over budget or way ahead, way behind schedule. Those are the times that you really learn for future projects. So I can imagine. And then of course, after 5 years of that, the change to the US. What brought that about? Was that in the thinking 2011, 2012, or was it a knee jerk?
Not so much. Met a girl, fell in love, and she is from Savannah, Georgia. So we met, and she moved to England after a while, and we lived together in England. And we had a long-standing agreement that when we got married and started a family, that she wanted to be closer to her parents and raise our kids in the US, which I was completely on board with. So 2012, early 2012, found out that we was going to be starting a family. My oldest boy, Leo, was born in 2012. So we up sticks and moved across, and Atlanta being a big city, especially again, still during the recession, it was still pretty tough over here at that point and limited opportunities. So fortunately, I could still run my business with some support from some great guys at McLaren Construction back in the UK. Really helped me out, and I did some pretty dull work for them for a few months, but it kept me afloat while we got settled here and kind of found our feet. I didn't have a job to come to, so I spent a lot of time researching the GCs that I wanted to work for, and kind of coming off the back of running your own business and having that kind of independence and rewards too, because like your own business, the harder you work, the more you put into it. Generally, as you know, like the rewards become greater. Like it's kind of direct correlation. And one of the great things, fortunately, to be interviewed here by McCarthy for a senior estimator position, which I at the time wasn't exactly what I was looking for, but McCarthy was definitely a company I wanted to work for. And we're employee owned, 100% employee owned. There's a lot around how that feels to be an employee owner here at McCarthy. You really do feel part of something. Obviously, the rewards that go alongside that, but like the feeling of ownership is such a powerful driver of being here. And you know, I was fortunate that they offered me a position, and I really wanted to kind of get my foot in the door and show them, you know, what I could do. So,
brilliant.
Yeah, 2013. It's probably 9 or 10 months after we moved here. Started a position here, and it was turns out to be a really great decision too. 7, maybe 8 years this year.
Brilliant. Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, and that time that you spent researching has really paid off. And then obviously coming from the UK, it's not easy. Different measurements, different technology, different way of building. How difficult was that, senior estimator? Did you have a mentor that you could kind of draw knowledge from, or were you just kind of like, wow, this is going to be a rough ride? Imagine the first 6 months was tough.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very different. Really, I mean, just feet and inches versus, doing a measurement in, meters or millimeters or, depending on how you take off. But I mean, that period, the first 6 months, I remember reading spec books and reading drawings and kind of, there's different abbreviations, and you even get that across the country. So, different parts of the country refer to the same thing, the same as we do, kind of differently. So just kind of getting my feet underneath me and understanding the process and how it works here, which is just slightly different. Terminology for things that are called, completely different. I was referring to ironmongery, and everyone's looking at me like, are you building a castle? What are you talking about? Hard door hardware. I'm like, yeah, ironmonger. And so just trying to get through information quickly for the first 6 months was hard because I'm Google. So Google was a mentor for a while, looking up image searches on some stuff to try and figure out what it meant. But I had two really great guys that works here in Jeff Toby, who's unfortunately no longer at McCarthy, but he was VP of Recon and just really kind of took time to help me kind of understand and learn. He was very patient because he could see that I understood, but there were still points where, entry level, estimator would know the answers to these questions, but it's just because of the cultural differences. And also Daniel Hurd is now Precon director, runs Preconstruction out in our Denver office. Daniel was great, and we're a similar age. He's a little bit younger than me, but I reported to him for a while, and he would make fun of me quite a lot. So thanks, Dan, if you're listening.
It's all part of the game.
He gave me a hard time about stuff, and he was generally interested actually in the way that I would do things back home. So it was, it was a good learning experience. It wasn't too much pressure. I was very concerned about corporate America, and what I'd heard, and it's not like that here, and everyone was super accommodating and willing to answer questions. I ask a lot of questions. If I don't understand, I'm going to ask until I understand. So
and it makes everything so easy, because otherwise you're relying on other people to ask you loads of questions and tell you the information that you don't need, but it's impossible if you don't tell them or ask the question. Again, communication is key. And I would imagine, and because I'm interested, that's difficult in itself, senior estimator, because your career has got an upward trajectory since then, which is fantastic. Now construction executive, and I'm interested in higher education and healthcare, the two kind of sectors that you've kind of attached yourself to. Was that because of your background, or was that just because of the projects that they had on in the Southeast?
It's the Atlanta office and McCarthy in general. I would say we are healthcare builders. McCarthy generally in the top 1 to 3 spots every year in volume, or as far as healthcare is concerned. So it's a big part of our market sector here in Atlanta, as is higher education. So during that time, I'd worked on one healthcare project in the late 90s, so completely irrelevant, especially with the this was an NHS building, National Health Service building, versus here, when one of my first healthcare projects I worked on here was for Emory Hospital, and it was a $230 million build, and we've got marble on the outside.
Brilliant.
So it's a slightly different animal here.
Yeah.
And again, I look at construction and breaking it down into the parts and pieces. So generally, you look at a hospital and how it's been built, and you can understand the information, you can understand the structure. Learning the systems was a little bit tough, and understanding a lot of that stuff and the very, specifics around healthcare, which is, incredibly difficult, incredibly complicated. But
I was just going to, and that was another question. It's probably a good time to get into it. Healthcare construction is considered a specialist construction, same as data centers, biopharma, pharmaceuticals. What is it about healthcare, and what are the intricacies that somebody needs to know or understand prior to getting into healthcare?
Well, healthcare, what is especially interesting about healthcare is that if you think about the different procedures and departments that exist within healthcare as a whole, they require different systems, they require different construction methods. So if you're building, say, a linear accelerator, a LINAC, on a hospital to take that machine, then the concrete thickness and the concrete vault that you build around it is incredibly large, incredibly thick, incredibly complex. If you're building imaging suite and you have MRI machines that are going into that imaging suite, then we've got all of the specialist shielding that goes into the MRI to protect people outside the MRI suite. So there's that. You're looking at ORs where you've got complex systems, medical gases, those different types of systems, and then going into that, as well as we don't just do new builds healthcare, we do renovation. In fact, a lot of our work right now here is renovation. And when you're working on in an ICU converting 2 or 3 rooms, you need to make sure that you're protecting the rest of the ICU while you're working in there. So infection control and negative air, and making sure that you understand kind of the GR portion of that work, and understanding how that's put together and how understand that's costing, understand how that's installed, to make sure that you're protecting everybody. I mean, especially now, you look at the situation we're in with coronavirus, and we're working in live emergency departments. It's control of infection and dust control, making sure that we're keeping the construction work inside the construction area, and there's no dust, no dirt, and no transfer of that. I mean, that's a big part of what we do. So I mean, healthcare is super interesting. There's lots of you kind of learn something new on every project. That's kind of why I love construction. It's never the same. Even if it is the same, 2 imaging suites, it's still its own set of problems.
Absolutely, yeah. And do you see that particular healthcare industry changing much now with what's going on in 2020? Is it going to get more strict? Is it going to change much, especially in pre-con and estimating? Is it going to be more? Is it going to get more expensive in general?
It's interesting actually, because healthcare right now, from a client standpoint, is you think about, they've got to plan their capital expenditure out 2, 3, 4 years in advance. They're thinking about what they need to do, master plans for campuses, and COVID right now is really hitting them hard, where you've had a big period of time where they don't have elective surgeries, so their revenue streams are cut, and they're still spending lots of money. So healthcare projects in general that we're seeing here we don't have a lot of huge healthcare projects. There's lots of renovation, and lots of them seem to be, revenue generating types of work. Yeah. So again, we're seeing a lot more of the renovations, small additions, and that's specific to our office. And I'm sure it will come back sooner rather than later. But until we get through this, and we get through this period of, it's just uncertainty, because the healthcare market as a whole, they've had a really tough time.
Yeah.
Over the last, I suppose it's almost a year now, right? So I feel like costs generally in this area, they're not rising. We're still really busy. We're still seeing lots of work coming in. Was expecting maybe a lull, Maybe that is 12 months out yet, but we're still on top of lots of healthcare pursuits that are coming out, and again, not huge, but still the work is certainly there, and there's lots of competition here in Atlanta. We've got some really good general contractors as competition, and we enjoy sparring with those guys and beating them.
That's why the best estimators and pre-construction people are sports people, because they know competition, they understand competition, and that's the beautiful thing about it. There's nothing better, whether it's same at risk, lump sum, hard bid. There's nothing better coming in and as a team celebrating the wins.
I'll be honest. I would much rather see some more CM at risk projects coming out. We seem to be seeing large percentage of hard bid stuff.
Yeah.
And everyone is, you've got a lot of competition going after the same stuff. So it's aggressive. People being aggressive to win the work right now. And I know a lot of the guys and girls in our competition. I'm actually on the executive committee of ABC of Georgia.
Brilliant.
So I'm chair-elect now. I'll be chairman next year.
Brilliant. Congratulations.
So thank you. There's a lot of my competitors who serve on the board there, who I know, and we have some sport talking about jobs that they won and we didn't. So it's, I like going to those meetings with a couple of wins under my belt.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing better but a bragging right. So again, getting those wins is difficult. Let's talk technology, because I know I know you work close with Colleen Martindale, who is an absolute rock star. Anybody hasn't caught her podcast or her episode, get on, have a look at it. It's on the Preconstruction Podcast, iTunes, Apple, or Spotify. And then she kind of she was quite honest and brutal about pre-construction technology and about what you guys are doing. And I got quite excited about it. From a healthcare, a commercial ground up point of view, what are you using right now, and what's a game changer for you? What's making your life easy?
So we use a variety of technology, especially through Precon. So there's a couple of things that really help, especially speed up the process and make it more accurate. Accuracy when we're doing high level budgets, or if we're walking into an interview for a project and we have zero information on it other than size, rough location. You don't get a ton of information for this stuff, and you go present for an hour on how you're going to build it. So we use a historical cost model software, Modelogix. That's especially helpful for me. So when we're going to present to an owner, or if I have a meeting with someone, and they've come and said, "Hey, I've got a 80,000 square foot medical office building that I want to build. What do you think?" Instead of me walking in and just throwing out, a square foot number, we use Modelogix. We have a ton of information from McCarthy from all over the country. It's all adjusted by RS means based on the location, and also by kind of the time period. So if we have a project from 2015, it will scale that square footage cost, and across every CSI category too. So we can expand it and get really into the weeds. So I'm able to walk into a meeting or an interview and say, "Hey, look, here's 5 buildings that are all a similar size that McCarthy have built and adjusted for location and adjusted for time. We're at X amount per square foot, and that will give you a total of Y."
Brilliant.
And to have that level of detail, we're continuously bringing in data, uploading that. So it's kind of a living, breathing kind of software. And I was involved a while back in helping get this software. So I'm very passionate about how good this is, and it gives you so much information. You can drill down into just kind of the skins of buildings. If you're having an issue, with an envelope, and you're working with a client and they're saying, "Hey, we're over budget and the envelope looks really expensive," we can go back and pull 4 or 5 projects and say, "Hey, look, these are all predominantly glass, skins, or predominantly metal panel," whatever it may be, and say, we can show you a range. Here's where you are, and it can kind of demonstrate, hey, we're at the high end here, or this is probably about right. So it gives us a lot of really usable data. It's a very powerful tool, and it helps in a number of situations, like presenting to owners, or even just using it as a back check to make sure that where you are as a whole on a project, is roughly where you think it should be.
Brilliant. And Modelogix, just to remind everyone, is that proprietary? Is that customized by McCarthy, or is it off the shelf?
Well, it's an off-the-shelf product, but it is highly customized by us. We built the database and all the way that we want it to work and the markets. So we have like healthcare, higher education. We have like lots of different sections, laboratory. So we have lots of different market sectors, and we can, we're doing it by division as far as McCarthy is concerned, region as far as McCarthy is concerned. So you can look at projects from different areas of the country. I mean,
it must be hugely, it must be hugely adaptable whenever you consider that Colleen's using it on the civil side. That's amazing. And then how does it present? I mean, you mentioned about numbers and figures. Is there any like analytics or models that you present to the owners? Like, because we're all visual, I'm interested to see how it adds to and helps out the marketing department.
So yeah, it does. It actually exports into a really kind of nice presentable table as far, and you'll have like the pictures of each project at the top, and it'll kind of side-by-side comparison of each project, and you can show it that way. You can also show like trends across those projects, so it will split it up by kind of substructure, superstructure, interiors, envelope, and it will show you a range for each project, and it will show you where we're putting the model, so it doesn't look like you're super low across the board and trying to give them false information, or that you're at the top end of the budget all the time. It kind of shows you where you've put it. So there's a lot of really great like visuals that you can use with that software. It's really quick too. I mean, that's part of the benefit. It's a quick process. You can do a really high level estimate in, maybe in an hour.
Brilliant.
As long as you've got good information and you can pull it. And
I mean, the amount of heavy lifting that's doing for you is incredible. Rather than having to go back and after every project.
And you can adjust too, because it will give you the numbers, and you can look and say, well, 3 of these buildings are, all glass, and this isn't. So I'm just going to scale the envelope number down a little, and you can go in and adjust. And again, it's quick and easy, and it can give you kind of a good, good product to present, or again as a gut check. Also, we use Assemble quite a lot, model-based estimating. And especially in SD, DD, and especially when you get to like a 95% CD estimate, if you do that, because that happens with our clients, is you can pull all of the information from a Revit model and quantify it, and it does it incredibly quickly. And it means that we can spot trends, and we use a trend log to map out as we go through design process. So you'll have an SD model, we'll pull the data from it, we'll cost it, we'll import that back. So you've got like this living kind of model-based price. And then as the architects are uploading new models, we can adjust that. So you can see when there's big spikes in costs, we can show trends, and we can say, hey, look, I'm going to pick on glass again because it's always expensive. So you see that you've added 4,000 square feet of additional curtain wall. So that's going to add this to the budget. That's going to put us over budget. Do you want to scale that back, or do you want to try and find, an area where we can tweak somewhere else to save the money to make all this balance? So rather than getting these big ups and downs of milestone estimates, like we do this bi-weekly, monthly, depending on the size of the project. So you never get this huge spike and a huge kind of VE exercise. You're kind of working together with the architect and the client and the design team as a whole to make sure that we're picking up on these things as you go. So you get this much more kind of small wavy line in pricing rather than this, spike back to budget, spike back to budget. It's really helpful. It's great for our clients. It's great for the architect because we build this relationship where, we truly are collaborating. It's not he drew this or she drew this and there's, they've increased the cost by $500,000. It's, hey, we're spotting this. How do you want to deal with it? What do you want to do? Do you want to bring it back or do you want to do something different?
Yeah.
You're working together, and a lot of the times it doesn't, the client doesn't see that portion of it because we're truly working as a team, and that collaboration is super, super important.
Yeah, especially at the minute, because I mean, clients, and what I'm seeing is the real contractor getting on earlier, getting involved in the project earlier and earlier is becoming more and more. It's becoming more and more popular on the client side, and that's what they're demanding. So if you've got the technology to allow you to do that, then you're always going to be either one or two or in consideration. So whenever you're doing that with the architect and the owner, are you able to give them access to Modelogix and give them not live data or a live update on costs, but just little trickles of what's happening?
So Modelogix is internal, and that's just kind of a historical cost database. So we don't generally give access to that, but Assemble and our trend log, absolutely.
Brilliant.
Everyone has access.
That must help.
What's going on, and they can. We use a trend log, so as the model's updated, you can see all of the pluses and minuses and what it is and why it's increased. And then what we've done to bring it back down again. And the client has access to that. So you've got like a live, I keep saying live, it's not quite live, but it's quite, right?
It's exactly. It's close as.
It's closer than, I was just looking to see if I had it. It's closer than doing like this, scour paper, 10 estimators doing
old
take
school.
off $200 million project that will take you weeks. And now you can press a button and you export all these quantities and you can see the change in 30 minutes.
It's exciting, Mark, isn't it? Let's be honest. It's incredible what's happening out there. And is there anything, obviously Modelogix, incredible tool. Is there anything that you've maybe tested or had it's on at beta stages that you think, that's going to be another game changer, another technology or even technique that you think will be? I like to ask my guests about a pre-construction prediction for 2021. What do you think is going to happen?
We're going to be replaced by robots.
Never. Technology and talent. That is technology and talent. That is the key to a successful contractor.
Honestly, I think what prediction-wise, and it's funny. I tell my kids this all the way through this period. My boys are 8 and 5, so. This has been, it's been tough. It's been a tough year for everybody, right? And they're in virtual school and then they're not. And then, they can't see their friends. They can't go to places they want to go to. And I always say to them, adapt and overcome. Right? You got to adapt to the situation, overcome the situation. We just got to change what we do to, be able to continue and be happy and just focus on the good things in life and the bad things. If you dwell on them, it's just they're going to become bigger and worse and drag you down. So because of all of that, I look at the construction industry as a whole and say, adapt and overcome. So 70% of the workforce in construction doesn't have a choice. They are out on the job site. They have to be there. They have to be around people. We have to figure out a way to keep everybody safe. And McCarthy has great safety protocols, and we work incredibly hard to keep our people safe, just in general, and now with COVID on top of that. But then when I look at our pre-construction departments, and generally, you'd have, I think we've got 12 to 15 people here in Precon, and they would all be sat out there in cubes, working, collaborating and chatting, walking around into the offices and asking questions, and that's kind of gone away. I don't know if it's ever going to come back, because people are proving, and the technology that's out there is showing that we can, in certain instances, and not every instance, but in certain instances, people don't need to be in offices, So I think from a technology standpoint, the integration of some of our tools and the way that we collaborate, we're thousands of miles away from each other, right? And I'm talking to you right here, and the amount of, Zoom, Blue Jeans, Teams, you name the platform, calls that we're on these days, that true collaboration in pre-construction and making sure that, coordination of scope on drawings and using Bluebeam Studio and having a session where everyone's in there and you're on screen and we're pulling it up and everyone's following along and we're, and that's part of our process as a whole, but I see that maybe stepping up to the next level and, having that ability to be engaged with each other a lot more virtually. And it makes me sad because I like people. I like being around people.
And listen, if you had a look at my LinkedIn as well, I'm a people guy, but I believe that this working from home, and I agree with you, the technology is moving so fast, it's making us really believe that we can do this working from home, and we can. I still don't think the creativity. You need to be in a war room. You need to be visual. You need to be in a war room with either a projector, a laptop, or a traditional whiteboard, and really.
Whiteboard.
Yeah, a whiteboard. Yeah, or if you want to go back to chalk on a blackboard, I don't mind. But you got to be there, throwing ideas at each other, saying yes, saying no. That's when the fast moving good ideas come out. And listen, I think what's going to come from 2020 is flexibility. And I think that idea of rushing out the door, leaving at 4:30 or 5:00 to miss the traffic, and being stuck in traffic for 2 hours, that's gone. There's going to be flexibility on when you come and go, but there's going to be a time where everybody's got to be in the office, in the war room, once a week, twice a week, getting the juices going and getting the real good decisions made.
And we're kind of doing them now. I mean, that's kind of our current state, is that and it depends on the role again, but generally we're encouraging people to work from home. Let's not put ourselves at risk unless we need to. But again, right here, safety protocols. I mean, everyone, as soon as I step out of my office, I'm wearing a mask. Everyone's wearing masks out there. We've got hand sanitizer like everywhere. So it's not an unsafe environment, but we're respecting people's decisions on if they want to work from home full time. They're working from home full time. We're not questioning that, and as long as the work is being complete. And I think the biggest issue that I have generally with kind of the virtual meeting is the tendency for people to switch off. And that's not aimed at anyone in general, but people will start working away on something else. And I mean, I'm guilty of this too, but they'll start working away on something else. And you'll ask them a question, but they wouldn't dream of doing that in the middle of your meeting when you're sitting there talking to everyone, right? So there needs to be some kind of sway back to, hey, we're in a meeting, we're all going to pay attention. This is on our laptops or on our computers, but don't do something else. Like, I need your 100% attention for 30 minutes, and that's it.
Absolutely.
And I think that's part of the challenge that we need to overcome.
And I think, as you say, we will adapt to that because we're still getting used to it. But I agree with you. If you can get people in, and I think we will. I think we'll get people once everything settles down. And fingers crossed, this is going to be within the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months. It'll all come back. But that's an interesting one. And again, now I want to talk to you. As you know, we relocate a lot of people around the US, and Atlanta's a big market for us. It's a booming market. It's still going well, even through 2020. I have to say, there's certain states in the US that have kind of powered through 2020 and have been continually, GCCMs have continually strengthened their estimating and pre-construction divisions, and Atlanta is one of those. What for the people that are considering relocating to Atlanta, what's the likes, and more importantly, no sitting on the fence on this now, what are the dislikes?
So I love living. I mean, I grew up in the suburbs around London, so Atlanta for me feels like a small city, but for a lot of people it doesn't. I mean, it's a big place. Traffic in normal times is tough. I mean, once you're out, it's okay, but generally traffic here is pretty bad. I'm going from the dislikes first. We'll make it that way. The humidity in the summer for a pasty white English guy is a little tough to deal with. I don't mind the temperature. Temperature's fine, but I mean, it gets hot, but and mosquitoes. We get a lot of bugs, a lot of bitey stuff in your backyard. So you go out in the garden for an hour, and if you don't have any kind of treatment out there, you come back with about 1,000 mosquito bites.
Yeah.
But I mean, plus side, I mean, from the middle of town, like middle of downtown to the North Georgia mountains is about hour and 45 minutes.
Beautiful.
An incredible wilderness. I mean, it's just beautiful up there, and you've got lots of lakes and rivers. There's great fishing, great outdoors type stuff. Our school systems outside and kind of the suburb areas here are great. Like quality of life generally, like housing is cheap. Generally, you get a lot for your money, and you can live in an incredibly nice neighborhood. And like I think about how I grew up and how my kids grow up. My kids grow up like spending their summer like at the pool or at the pool every day. There's
completely different
stuff going on, and but your neighbors, like compared to living at home, like your neighbors here, like at home, it's like either side of you, maybe the person lives on the other side of the street.
Yeah.
But generally that's it. Like here, it's like the whole neighborhood. It's like lots of different people stop and chat, and you have barbecues together, and you go to events together, and there's this much kind of greater community spirit. And again, I grew up in around quite a big city, so it's, even though it is big here, it's part of that southernness.
Yeah. And that's one the thing that blew me away. Being down in North Carolina, South Carolina, Dallas, Austin, Atlanta, even parts of Florida, the southern charm, the warm welcome that you get. People can't do enough for you. It's something that you literally have to experience to understand, because people were telling me about it and I had an idea. I was going, of course I compare everything to Irish people. It can't be as nice as the welcome that we give you in Ireland, like a good slap in the back and a pint of Guinness, but it really is. It's different, but it's incredible.
Yeah, Southern hospitality is a thing. It's real. And so the other thing too, from a location standpoint, living in Atlanta, the Gulf Coast in Florida, like you can be on the Gulf Coast in 5 hours, like some of the best beaches in the world. Like getting out of here from Hartsfield-Jackson, like you can fly to anywhere. You can fly to anywhere. Not like you need to get a connection. I mean, generally, you can hop on a plane and be where you want to go. And yeah, I mean, it's a lot's going. There's just a lot that happens in Atlanta. Like terrible sports teams. I mean, I've got to ask you about the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I mean, how good is that? I mean, it looks good. I haven't been, and it is on the list, but it looks incredible. As a venue, they've done an amazing job. I mean, there's not a bad seat in the house. I mean, I've been there to watch Atlanta United play, see the Falcons play, and it's probably the best stadium. I like stadiums too. I'm a sports guy, and it's one of the best stadiums I've ever been to. The best.
Wow.
And not only that, what Arthur Blank has done really well, the owner of the franchise, is he's kept concessions like really low. So you can get a hot dog for like $1.50, and you pay $2 for a Coke, and it's refillable the entire time. It's like $5 for a beer. Like it's not. Once you get in, like most sports facilities, it's like, hey, you want a beer? It's $15. Like they just haven't done that. And food options in there are incredible. I mean, it's a fabulous place to go watch sports, and
it makes the experience all the better, knowing that you're going in there, you're going to get good food, you're going to get good drink, you're going to get well looked after, and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg, and you're going to get entertained for 3, 4, 5 hours.
Oh yeah. So there, and again the Braves with their new stadium, and again the experience around that and the whole area around that is built as kind of a leisure facility. So you've got bars and restaurants, and the stadium's attached to it. It's literally 5 minutes from where I'm sitting to, which makes it great. And I've never been a huge baseball fan ever, really, and even now I very rarely watch baseball on TV, but going into baseball is just different. It's an experience, and it's a fun, especially family. Take the kids and go out and have a fun few hours out there watching some baseball.
Brilliant. Yeah, no doubt about it. The southern charm and the way they do sports, they're doing something right. Well, listen, Mark, this has been incredible. Thank you very much. I know our audience will love this. This is the second McCarthy guest we've had that's knocked it out of the park. So looking forward to. Well, usually I know, and usually I have to, and I did actually put, so I kind of break it up into little clips, and I used the subtitles a couple of times, but I just end up having to go in and change all of the subtitles because it tries to understand, and it's just it's actually more work than it's worth. So, but no subtitles. If you wanna listen to this, you listen to this. We won't be reading off us. But no, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll stay in touch, and looking forward to seeing your career flourish with McCarthy and keep in touch with your journey.
Sounds good. Thanks, man.